The second chapter basically talks about different kinds of topics that are to be covered. The topics are going to be private and public sector, and then all the variations of private sector, all the subdivisions of private sector, and then we are going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages. So we'll begin the chapter with private and public sector. Private sector refers to all the businesses which are owned and controlled by private individuals, and their main objective is maximization of profits. Whereas public sector includes all the businesses which are owned and controlled by government, and when we are talking about these type of businesses, their main objective is not profit maximization. They are basically thinking about serving the community more than anything else. Moving on, we are going to then talk about basically three different types of economic systems or economies. The first type of economy is called planned or command economy. A planned or command economy is basically an economic system of a country in which all the businesses or all the business activity is owned and controlled by government. So the government gets to control all the business activity. Such type of an economy is called a command or a planned economy. Then we move on to the second type of economic system or economy, in which we are talking about the other extreme, that is all the businesses are owned and controlled by no, not by government now, by the private sector, by the private individuals. So when private sector gets to control all the businesses, we are talking about free market economic system or market economy as it is sometimes called. Most of the economies of the world are neither command economies nor they are free market economies. They are basically falling under the category of mixed economies, where private and public sector both join hands and come together and work in close coordination with each other to run all the business activity of a particular country. Moving on, we are going to now talk about different variations, different subdivisions of private sector. Private sector, when we are talking about it, is subdivided into different businesses. Let me, name the businesses or list the businesses very quickly for you. We are going to talk about sole traders, partnerships, private and public limited companies, and then after that we are going to talk about cooperatives, and then franchises and joint ventures and holding companies. We'll start with a sole trader. Sole trader is usually a small business owned and controlled by a single individual having unlimited liability. This type of business is unincorporated, which means it does not have a separate legal identity. Being a single owner, he gets to enjoy all the profits. He makes all his decisions on his own. Complete sovereignty is there in terms of the decision-making process. And, obviously, now the business is, because it is being owned by a single person, there are no disagreements between, owners, because there is only one owner. The disadvantages, the first disadvantage is unlimited liability. Unlimited liability, that risk of the owner goes beyond his investment. He is supposed to bear all the losses that are being borne by the business, that are being suffered by the business. So he has to pay off all the losses, even if he has to use up his own belongings. That is what you call as unlimited liability. After unlimited liability, we also talk about lack of skill, lack of finance, and lack of continuity as a result of that. So small businesses, since this that is a sole trader in this case, a small business or a sole trader is not going to have long-term sustainability because of lack of finance, lack of skill, and various other problems, that is not having access to too many products that are being produced by them or that are being offered by them in the market. We move on to the second variation of private sector, which is partnership. Basically, partnership is an association of 2 to 20 individuals. The 2 to 20 individuals who come together and who are joining hands for maximizing the profits. At least one of the partners needs to have unlimited liability. The business is unincorporated, that is, it does not have a separate legal identity. and then we quickly jump on to the advantages and disadvantages part. The advantages, when we are talking about a partnership, now we have 2 to 20 individuals, so the skill is going to improve, losses can be shared, and we are talking about obviously having access to more finance as well. More innovation is going to come into play as well. People are going to think out of the box, and we are going to be able to compete in a better way. Obviously, we are going to have longer sustainability as compared to sole traders. The disadvantages, we are going to talk about the disadvantages. The disadvantages, when we are talking about with reference to partnership, unlimited liability still exists. Now profits are to be shared amongst more individuals. Still the skill, yes, it has improved as compared to a sole trader, but it is not necessarily optimized in a partnership. And furthermore, when we are talking about it, lack of agreements or disagreements are going to be created as a result of having more than one owners. We move on to the limited companies now. Limited companies are subdivided into two different parts: private limited companies and public limited companies. Private limited companies and public limited companies, both, when they are to be formed, we need to have two different types of legal documents which need to be there in order to form both of these businesses. The two documents which are required for the formation or incorporation of these two different businesses, that is private and public limited companies, are articles of association and memorandum of association. Articles of association, it is a document which contains all the rules and regulations pertinent or related to a particular company. And when we are talking about memorandum of association, it contains basic details regarding the company, which the basic details basically include name, nature of the business, and then we are talking about the capital employed by the business as well. After that, we are going to define a private limited company and a public limited company, and then we are going to have a second lecture on the same chapter as well, because I don't want to increase the length of the lectures beyond 5 to 7 minutes. That is why we are going to have a second lecture on the same chapter. At the moment, we are talking about a private limited company, which is usually small to medium scale enterprise, 2 to 50 individuals. The business is incorporated, that is, it has a separate legal identity. And this type of business is usually a family-owned business. We talk about this type of business, and then we talk about its advantages and disadvantages as well. When we are talking about the advantages, now we have access to up to 50 individuals, so more finance, more a bigger pool of skills is going to be there as well. More innovation is going to come into play, and we are going to have a sustainable condition in the market, long-term sustainability, that is, and then the legal personality of the business is also stronger than the other two unincorporated businesses. The disadvantages, again, the disagreements are going to increase. We are going to have a situation where businesses, where this kind of business, is going to have up to 50 individuals. So, now the profits have to be shared amongst more individuals, and, a few more problems may be created, because now the business is not going to be run by, one particular individual. A lot of people are going to be involved. So, more and more disagreements are going to be there. A public limited company is a large-scale enterprise which is owned and controlled by not by government. It is owned and controlled by private individuals. You have to be sure of that, when you are defining it. It is usually a large-scale enterprise, that is a public limited company owned and controlled by private individuals. It is the minimum number of members is 7 and the maximum is unlimited. The shareholders are going to be there. Shareholders are basically part owners of the business up to a minimum of 7 and a maximum of unlimited number of shareholders are going to be there in this kind of business. And now the separate legal identity is there, that is the business is incorporated and the shareholders have limited liability. The advantages: largest pool of skill amongst all the businesses. Then we have access to a lot of finance, because we can obviously in this case we are able to sell the shares to general public through stock exchange. And then moving on to the disadvantages, the disagreements and sharing of losses and legal formalities. All these are the disadvantages of the thing. Here I'm going to end the first part of chapter number 2. Assalamu alaikum.